Hi, I'm Jen from Reading in Room 11, and I want to give you an overview of the syllable type lessons. But before I do, I just want to say a quick thank you for purchasing this resource. It's something that has been tremendously beneficial for my own students, and I hope that you and your students are able to find the same success. The first step of every lesson is the warm up. This is what the student copy looks like. You can see that the warm up is blank. It's essentially just a placeholder so that students understand each lesson starts with a warm up. This is what the teacher display looks like. You have a choice of two warm-ups. You could either do the sound card warm-up or a sounds only warm-up. And I'm going to give you a closer look at both of those warm-ups. Here are the vowel team sound cards. These are part of the vowel team syllable type. So they are broken up specifically by lesson dealing with certain long vowels. These are sound cards. You'll find three different sound cards in here. This is an example that just has the code or the vowel sound. There are some that have articulation prompts and, oops, visual cues. So you'll notice these bars right here, these are called sound bars, and the larger the bar, the more common the spelling is. So you can see that within some of these long A sounds, there are some pretty small power bars, meaning that these aren't exactly common spellings, but they are still important to know for vowel teams. Next, we have the sound only warm up. Again, this is specific to vowel teams because it's broken up by lessons and long vowel sounds. You will also find in the vowel team section there is a cumulative review as more spelling patterns are introduced. But this does not have any prompts, any visuals. It just has the sounds, and students can go through and use these. This is just a personal preference, but I use this book with every group I see. It's Equipped for Reading Success by David Kilpatrick. It has 1 minute activities on the back that focus on training phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is a foundational reading skill. It's also the highest predictor of reading success, and it's something that can be taught. It has several levels, D through M, and this is just an example of what each level, or I'm sorry, what two of the levels cover. The next part is sound review. The top shows an example of the student copy in black and white, and bottom is what it would look like on the teacher display. These sounds are specific to the syllable types. Each sound has a power bar. The power bar indicates how common the spelling of that sound is. So the larger the power bar, the more common the spelling. I personally have students point to each letter, say the letter, then the sound, and the keyword. So for example, for the first one, they would say hat. Depending on the lesson, the next section is either chaining or explicit instruction, which I will get into in a moment. Chaining is a sequence of words that can be built by changing one sound at a time. I typically use dry erase markers and whiteboards during this activity. It's important that when you're talking about manipulating these sounds, you're always referring to them as sounds rather than words. So, for example, I might start by having students write the word lap, lap. And then I might ask them to add a sound so that lap says slap. Change a sound so that slap says slip. And finally, take a sound away so that slip says sip. Explicit instruction is the next part if it's not chaining. This is a time where, quite literally, you are explicitly teaching students how to break down multisyllabic words using the strategy of underlining and scooping. For this section only, if a student sees the word and knows it, I always tell them that that is amazing, but it has to be an inside thought and they cannot say it out loud. This is what the student copy looks like. It provides the four words for explicit instruction for them, and this is what the teacher display looks like. On the teacher display, you'll notice that some animations are going to come up where it's underlining vowel sounds and scooping word parts, and that is included for you in the teacher lesson display. So when we look at this word, we'll start by underlining the vowel sounds. It's important to refer to them as sounds rather than singular vowels because, in other words, two vowels can be working together to make one sound. So in this word, I would start by underlining the vowel sounds. And I know that because there are three vowel sounds, this word has three word parts. So the next step is scooping. So scooping is where we are breaking down the word into smaller parts, and then we would review it. I typically start by reviewing the sounds. So we would look at the first part and I would say, what sound? What sound? You. What sound? Ah. This is a point where we may talk about what students notice about these words. So, for example, they might notice that the first and the last part are closed syllables, so the vowels say its sound. And they might notice that the middle is an open syllable, so the U is free to say its name. After we talk about that, we go through and we look at the word parts. So we would start with the first one, suck, cue, lent, and then we would put the words together, succulent. The next section is word parts. This is new to the update. This is the teacher display. You can see that there are parts of real words. These are actually parts of words that will be found in the next section for word reading, but this is an opportunity for students to really apply that syllable type knowledge in isolation, where they're just looking at small word parts and determining what sounds they make. So, for example, for the first one, we have a magic E, then a closed syllable, an open syllable at the end, a bossy R, and just some patterns like shun that they will often see in multisyllabic words. The next section is word reading. This is where students apply the strategy of underlining and scooping that you just modeled for them in the explicit instruction section. This is the teacher copy. The teacher copy has the answers to how words should be underlined and scooped. If you see something like this, where both the I and the E are underlined, that does indicate that it's the magic E syllable, and the space indicates where the scoop should be. So, for example, side would be one scoop and step would be the next. So I always have students start by whisper reading the words to themselves that is truly a whisper. I need to be able to hear them, that they are completing the task, but they also need to be quiet enough whereas they're not distracting the other students in the group. I also always tell them that they need to read and reread until I ask them to stop. So once students have had an opportunity to whisper read their words, I sometimes take turns, I'm sorry, I always take turns listening to them whisper read. And then we do a variety of the following things. Students can read chorally, meaning that we will read a row together or perhaps the whole section. Sometimes we take turns reading the sounds. Sometimes I'll assign a student a row or each student a column, just depending on how many students you have in your group. But the important thing is that it's never a cold read. So I always have students whisper read, take turns listening to them so I can provide feedback and help them work through a word if they're saying it incorrectly. And then they'll have this is my students' favorite part. We very often turn the word reading section into a tic-tac-toe board. So we just draw our squares around, and the only rule is that you have to read the word first before you can put down your X or O. So, for example, the student would say protect, and then the next student would go, and we go until we have a winner. The next part is dictation. Dictation allows the students to work on encoding, which means writing the words as a target skill, and the words are found in the teacher's copy. So these are called sound boxes. And the reason why they're called that is because each box represents one sound. So that doesn't necessarily mean a letter, which I will show you on the next slide. So for example, in the word forbid, OR is two letters. However, those two letters work together to make one sound or, so that goes in one box. This is a picture of the teacher display. I do show this to students after we do dictation so that they can correct their own work. Something that has been added to this, sentence writing is a new addition with the update. This is what the student copy looks like, and it involves choosing a word from the word reading section. You can either have students choose the word they want and write their own sentence, or the teacher can dictate a sentence using one of the words to the students. The next section is phrases and sentences. This is another new section with the update. So the phrases and sentences, this is the student copy. You can see that there are some words in bold. Those are words, multisyllabic words that students have already underlined and scooped during the word reading process. So this is kind of a controlled setting for them to practice those decoding skills and work on fluency with shorter text at the phrase and sentence level before getting into a passage. The teacher display also has each phrase or sentence on one slide. The only difference is it does not have the word in bold. This is roll and read. It's something I also have in my shop. It is just a fun way to make fluency a little more engaging. So we might roll the dice. If it rolls on a six, we're going to use our most surprised voice to read the phrases or sentences. Lastly, we have reading in context. Now, this section is left blank on purpose, and I just need you to hear me out on why. So, I didn't want to pick a passage that was one size fits some. For example, I am currently using the vowel team lessons with two groups that are in the same grade level. However, their ability to apply these skills in context is vastly different. So one group can read more challenging grade level text, and the other group needs really more phonetically regular passages. So you know your students best. I wanted you to be able to have the opportunity to select the text that best meets the needs of your students. And again, like I just said, different groups have different levels, and so the same passage might not be appropriate for both. I also like to use this section to tie into students' content. So, for example, depending on what they're learning in a specific grade level, I will find content related passages to help build their background knowledge while applying their multisyllabic word reading skills. And just to help you out, I have actually it's now five places for you to find free text, and I'm going to show you those right now. This is included in your download. These are free links to decodable text. Each slide has clickable links. So this is Core Knowledge Language Arts, CKLA. These are their free resources. So it'll show you the specific pattern, like short vowels, and it will show you the sounds within that pattern. So there's a sheet for kindergarten, a sheet for first grade, and second grade. I'll show you an example of what it looks like when you click on one. So this will bring you to the specific skill snapshots. This is a first grade reader, and there is a teacher's guide, a student workbook, and this is the decodable text that I was specifically talking about. So again, a decodable text is a controlled text and where the specific skill that you're working on will be in here. So you are able to search. You can explore by topic. They have specific topics over here. You can drill down to be a little more specific. I typically like article a day sets, and they very often coincide with core knowledge, language, arts readers, which is what the students in my school use for their reading curriculum. The West Virginia Phonics site. These are decodable, so they are controlled. So over here, you can see the different kind of patterns. And then let's see here, if we were doing vowels, you would click on this, and then it will show you some materials. It has actually some lessons, but then some passages as well. There's another resource right here, CKLA, and this will take you to their social studies section. This link will automatically bring you to something that has been filtered for history and geography. And honestly, you can kind of ignore the grade level that it says. This just talks about, for this specifically, during kindergarten is when students learn about history and geography. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is at a kindergarten reading level. So, for example, they'll give you a teacher's guide for exploring your world and a student book. The student book is a really great resource. It is essentially a picture book that talks about different social studies topics. So this one is exploring our world, and you can see that there are chapters. It has some great visuals and some multisyllabic words that students can be decoding. The final resource is Common Lit. Common Lit is a resource that I recently learned about and it has quickly become one of my favorite. So I personally prefer the target lessons and then I search by grade level. Third grade is the lowest that it goes to. And one of the lessons that we have done is about identifying problems and solutions. So if you click on this, you can download materials. I'll show you what the student copy looks like. So it has a great warm up. It's kind of looking at pictures, um, activating that prior background knowledge, and then it goes into a target skill. Then there's a video, or I'm sorry, I'll get into the video in a moment, but then there's a passage. The paragraphs are numbered, which is something that students may see, especially as they get older in certain reading passages. And then it stops along the way to kind of check in for comprehension. And there is typically a longer response at the end. Each lesson does come with Google Slides pre-made, and these lessons go along with the passage. So it kind of gives you the agenda. This is the kind of activating prior knowledge section. And then there's always a video that explains the target skill. So in this case, it would be problem and solution. Thank you so much for listening and for downloading this resource. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email is readinginroom11@gmail.com. I will do my best to get back to you within 48 hours as I am still teaching full time and a parent. And I know we all have busy, crazy lives, but I will do my best to get back to you in a timely fashion.